This week, it's about friendship, specifically brotherhood. Obviously, we are two men, so we're going to speak to that more than the vague topic of friendship. But we'll cover the basis for everybody to kind of explore this idea and what it means to drop into meaningful, intentional friendship. And I think this is such an important topic. And we were thinking about, what are the things that we could really speak to without necessarily an expert on the podcast. And this is something we can obviously talk about because we've been exploring this and deepening into it. And the podcast has literally come from our brotherhood. So excited for this episode.
Yeah, man, super excited. And we thought a good place we could start with, I'm going to read from a book by David Whyte, Consolations. David Whyte is a philosopher, poet, and just amazing writer, and highly recommend checking out his writing. And this is his writing on friendship, and then we'll dive into it. So he says, friendship is a mirror to presence and a testament to forgiveness. Friendship not only helps us see ourselves through another's eye, but can be sustained over the years only with someone who has repeatedly forgiven us for our trespasses, as we must find it in ourselves to forgive them in turn. A friend knows our difficulties and shadows and remains in sight, a companion to our vulnerabilities more than our triumphs. When we are under the strange illusion, we do not need them. An undercurrent of real friendship is a blessing exactly because its elemental form is rediscovered again and again through understanding and mercy. All friendships of any length are based on a continued mutual forgiveness. Without tolerance and mercy, all friendships die. In the course of the years, a close friendship will always reveal the shadow in the other as much as ourselves. To remain friends, we must know the other and their difficulties, and even their sins, and encourage the best in them, not through critique, but through addressing the better part of them, the leading creative edge of their incarnation, thus subtly discouraging what makes them smaller, less generous, less of themselves. Through the eyes of a real friendship, an individual is larger than their everyday actions, and through the eyes of another, we receive a greater sense of our own personhood, one we can aspire to, the one in whom they have most faith. Friendship is a moving frontier of understanding, not only of the self and the other, but also of a possible and yet unlived future. Friendship is the great hidden transmuter of all relationship. It can transform a troubled marriage, make honorable a professional rivalry, make sense of heartbreak and unrequited love, and become the newly discovered ground for a mature parent-child relationship. The dynamic of friendship is almost always underestimated as a constant force in human life. A diminishing circle of friends is the first terrible diagnostic of a life in deep trouble, of overwork, of too much emphasis on a professional identity, of forgetting who will be there when our armored personalities run into the inevitable natural disasters and vulnerabilities found in even the most average existence. Through the eyes of a friend, we especially learn to remain at least a little interesting to others. When we flatten our personalities and lose our curiosity in the life of the world or of another, friendship loses spirit and animation. Boredom is the second great killer of friendship. Through the natural surprises of a relationship held through the passage of years, we recognize the greater surprising circles of which we are a part of, and the faithlessness that leads to a wider sense of revelation independent of human relationship. To learn to be friends within the earth and the sky, with the horizon and with the seasons, even with the disappearances of winter, and in that faithfulness, take the difficult path of becoming a good friend to our own going. Friendship transcends disappearance, and enduring friendship goes on after death. the exchange only transmuted by absence, the relationship advancing and maturing in a silent internal conversational way, even after one half of the bond has passed on. But no matter the medicinal virtues of being a true friend or sustaining a long, close relationship with another, the ultimate touchstone of friendship is not improvement, neither of the other nor of the self. The ultimate touchstone is witness, the privilege of having been seen by someone, and the equal privilege of being granted the sight of the essence of another, to have walked with them and to have believed in them, and sometimes just to have accompanied them for however brief a span on a journey impossible to accomplish alone. He's so good.
Wow. So this book, Consolations, Chase actually gifted to me as a dear friend.
Yeah.
What a good gift. I mean, thank you so much for actually giving one of these copies to me, because these little nuggets of wisdom, and David White, I know you saw him in person here in Nosara, and I mean, I'd love to, one day experience him and maybe have him on the podcast. But how he talks about such a complex and individualized and different experience for so many potentially different individuals around the world, but capture it simplistically. Like the two words I pulled from it: forgiveness and witnessing. Oh, that's so good.
So many nuggets in there. Yeah. And maybe we could talk about the forgiveness part first. And I think it's an interesting one. And he mentions it, but timeline, it's, and it doesn't matter how brief of a span, and a friendship of a month is much different than a year, of 2 years, of 10 years. Like, how special is that? And the longer it goes, the more you're going to have to forgive, right? Like, we are not um, perfect humans. And if you're not forgiving your friends or yourself every time they upset or disappoint you, then it's going to be a short friendship, right? Or not a super healthy one. So we could go on about that, but I think there's a lot of other things we want to get to. That's a huge one. And in witness, I think that's like the touchstone of friendship, and why it feels so good, because we're social animals, and just be by ourselves. And like today, when you came in, you were a witness to a story that I wanted to share, that we're deep friends, and I had this individual experience which was profound and beautiful, and I'm thinking about it, this crazy thing that happened to me with very serendipitous kind of miraculous occurrence I felt, and that's beautiful, and I can sit with that, and I sit with it for myself and be a friend to myself. That's another thing, but it's just another way to experience myself when I get to share it with you and you reflect back to me.
Yeah, I think everything is amplified when we get to share it. Like this is I don't know if did you ever see Into the Wild or read Into the Wild?
I read it and saw it. Yeah.
This I mean, the whole story of that person, not to ruin it, how it's going to end. So hopefully you saw it by now.
He dies.
Damn it, ruined it. When he dies,
It's not funny. Sorry.
terrible. When he dies, the last thing he wrote, and just to have some context, is he went into the wild to go into isolation, to leave society, to go deep into nature, to just be in the wild, as it would be in the title. The last thing he wrote when he was about to die, he realized happiness is only real when shared. And like I get goosebumps even saying it, because it was the last thing he said when he left the world behind to go find some freedom and deep kind of natural experience. He realized, oh wait, this isn't happiness. Happiness is real when shared. It happens when experiencing it with others. It's a felt thing because we experience it together. So this witnessing, it's like seeing something miraculous, like shooting stars, or seeing something that is meaningful to you, like going through the redwood forest, which I've done before. It's one thing to do it alone, but to do it with somebody, be able to journey with somebody. And this is how I think about friendship too, is somebody you can journey with, like knowing you and us and how we're going to journey through life together, and that level of commitment to each other. We have to constantly be able to witness each other along this path. So it captures it. Forgiveness and witnessing, I think, really captured what you read there, and feel very resonant to me.
It's beautiful and inspiring, and we want to talk about the ways to cultivate friendship,
Yeah.
and so now we have like the idea
Yeah.
of
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it's so beautiful. And if you're watching, you're like, yeah, great, but I want
Cool. Cool.
friends,
Cool. Yeah.
and I was in that place.
Mhm.
3 years ago, and you and I talked before the podcast, and we've talked about this before, but I'll share a little bit about my story of coming into friendship. We talked about Ryan is a very friendly dude. I know it comes across, and you shared like you never. I won't say never. I'm sure there were moments, but you've always had deep, meaningful friendships that have kind of been there for you, and I haven't. And I think it was a combination of things. I moved a lot as a child, like 4 or 5 different high schools, 3 different colleges, and I had great friends along the way, but it was hard to really cultivate it, when you're always moving, and then it's like, ciao. And then I was in a 12-year relationship and marriage, and I'm deep, good friends with my ex-wife, and yet I was lacking brotherhood. I was lacking friendship outside of the marriage, and we talked about what I experienced and what I think happens, especially. You don't have to be in partnership, but I think when you're in partnership, it's easier to not cultivate friendships that, platonic friendships, because you are being somewhat fulfilled in this area of friendship with your partner, and that's beautiful. And it wasn't until after my divorce 4 years ago, and actually after I broke up with my first girlfriend after that, that I was in this space of extreme loneliness and pain of the heartbreak, and not being able to share it with anyone other than my therapist, and really to connect with someone. And it became very clear to me that I needed to put as much emphasis as I had into my romantic relationships and cultivating them, and trying to meet a romantic partner, and cultivating that into friendships. And so I kind of switched my mind of like, all right, I'm not dating, I'm dating for friendship. And that's actually, we met like a month after that. It was like I had a ceremony, and this became very clear even before that, but that was my intention, and I attracted it, but I don't believe it was some mystical thing. It was an intentional thing. And I believe, when what you put into your intention, you'll attract. And so I think to those of you listening and watching, a big thing is intentionality, and really changing your mindset, like so many of these things, to cultivate friendship. So how do you do that? For me, it was, I'm going to ask like these guys that I'd seen through town, and women. I value female friendship very much as well, and say, I'm gonna ask them to lunch. Like this person that I would always see in passing, be like, "Hey, John, how are you? Waves are good. All the small talk." But I'm like, they seem super cool. I want to get to know them. Intentionally going, "Hey, let's grab lunch," and following up and actually doing it. And that led me to meet Cam, who is our mutual friend, which led to our friendship. But even when we started to hang out, it doesn't just happen on its own. Like I was still in the mindset of like, all right, Ryan seems super cool. I'm going to make time and space and put my energy towards cultivating that. And it's beautiful when the other person is in the same place as I feel like you kind of naturally are. And then we get to meet each other. And then this third entity of the relationship, the friendship, can grow.
Yeah. I want to go into that after. I want to go into the place that a lot of people might be, which is where you were in the marriage or in the loneliness,
Mm-hmm.
because many men are in a place of feeling lonely. And there's some major statistics on this, and 15% of men have zero close friends, and that blows me away. And yet, because of technology kind of isolating us and so many things making us feel connected, like, oh, I see you online, but are we really connected, right? We're kind of isolated in so many ways, just how society is set up. when you're in the chapter of your life where you had a partner, even you had a kid, you had Stella 9 years ago, you had those areas met, but you didn't have close friendship. Like, I want to know more about that. Like, what is the pieces that were very real and visceral for you during that time? That's like, I can't really get close friends because, correct me if I'm wrong, you didn't really have any real close male friends at that time because you were semi-fulfilled in the partnership and having a kid and business and so many things happening. Like, why was it so difficult in that time to not cultivate the friendships?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I think it was a very practical thing. Like I said, moving so much, and we moved from Florida to California, and so on top of all that, and we have different phases and seasons of our life, and it was just interesting that my season of marriage and partnership and parenthood was kind of started at a younger age of around 21, 22, and I did feel fulfilled in a sense, and it's not wrong. Like it wasn't wrong, but it's like you don't know what you don't know. And it became so apparent when I went through the divorce, when I went through that first breakup, and then there was this void of the universe saying like, oh, like you don't have these other things that were fine and fulfilling, and this pain, this depression, this loneliness, that void, it can be filled, within. I definitely went within, but it's like I need to cultivate friendship, and so um, I think people can be proactive so that when they do go through that breakup, they don't look around. They go, "Man, I don't have any friends for support."
Yeah.
So I wouldn't change a thing. And to those listening, I would say if you are in partnership, it you don't have to go out. Like, great, if your best friend's your partner, beautiful, and try to cultivate the friendships. And now it can be easy. In some ways it isolates us, but in some ways, pick up the phone and call your friend. I heard someone say at some point, like, oh, I know what my friends are doing. I see them on social media. It's like, nah, that's not the same thing. And actually, it's like a very false connection. So I didn't answer your question, like super directly, but
But you did,
yeah.
because that's what I was curious about, because obviously there was something that you wanted, but it wasn't as obvious until the other parts got removed. It's like, oh, without the wife, without the partner, oh, I realized I do want a deep friendship. And we can often put that on our partner, male or female, and it can weigh on the relationship. It can have its own set of challenges of like,
Yes.
oh, you're my best friend. We do everything together, and that can feel like a lot. And I honestly wouldn't personally recommend that for anybody, to have other people to discuss things with. Like, for instance, your most recent partnership, to be able to talk about things together during and after the transition out. For my partnership, with all the health issues that I've gone with my partner, to be able to talk about it with you and friends that I have, it is essential. I can't talk about certain things with her because of the place that we're at. It just isn't right for me to put things onto her at this point in time. So for the ones that are like, oh, I got my partner and things are good, like, it might take even more effort, because technically you're like, oh, I feel fulfilled. I feel fine. I could settle into this. But there's a settling that might not really support your whole human, right? This is the whole human experience for a reason. We're talking about all the areas. One of those areas is social. Is your social battery, is your social area getting fulfilled? Like, are you actually making the effort, even though it's like, oh no, I'm pretty good. Like, things are pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's when it actually could be harder, because you could be in a place of deep pain and necessity to do it. And you might have more of a drive or motivation or know you need to do it. But when it's less obvious like that, it's like, oh, it's kind of riding. It's kind of okay. But to make that intentional effort, even when things are going good, it could be even more meaningful, which is what I'm hearing from your story.
Yes, great point. And that made me think of, I did put unnecessary and detrimental pressure and energy on my marriage because of that. And I later realized that I wasn't fulfilled in the friendship, and I was looking for too much of it in the partnership.
Mhm.
So that's a great point. And this metaphor popped into my mind of when we have an injury, and let's say our knee, we have a torn ligament, but we can still walk, and we haven't had it diagnosed. Our body's going to adjust, and we'll get through life fine. Like we'll still be able to walk, maybe even run if you got a partially torn meniscus, and that's going to create another imbalance. And we're not whole, we're not well, even though we might feel it. That just popped into my mind, right? Like to go with. So I felt okay, I was being fulfilled, but I was not balanced, and we can do that in all areas of our lives. And I think having this conversation, bringing it to people's attention to learn from my journey. Yeah.
What was the hardest part for you when coming out of that partnership after the marriage? Because you can go from one relationship to the next, and that can kind of happen for people as well. We just kind of pop in relationship, partnership, and don't kind of call in friendships in different ways. What was the hardest part for you to cultivate that? Because it's almost like a muscle, kind of. You have to put yourself out there. You have to do different things to show up and be vulnerable enough to ask. You mentioned some kind of practical things, but was there any like internal pieces that felt difficult for you? Like what's the hardest part about actually making friends?
Yeah, it's hard as an adult. I would say we live in a uniquely small town too. It I would say that the challenge was just changing my mindset. And it wasn't too much of a challenge because it was like the pain was abundantly clear. I was like, I need this for survival almost. And I feel fortunate that it came that clear. And I took, many of you listening, and I'm speaking mostly to men here. But I think we've all been in the place where like, I want to date and I want to find a partner, and you take a certain mentality and a certain drive or whatever you want to call it. You're like, I'm dating, and whatever your goals are, we'll have different relationship podcasts dedicated to this, but there's a determination, right? Of like whether you want to hook up with someone or you want to develop a deep friendship and partnership and everything in between. But there's like a certain like you buy meals, you drive across the country, you fly places, like you do a lot of things to cultivate those potential romantic partnerships, right? Or at least I do. I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think you've driven, across the state at one point or another. And I was like, I realized I had that in me. I was like, I need to redirect that motivation, that energy towards friendship. And it became like a really easy and clear thing, right?
Yeah,
Does that make sense?
it does make
Yeah.
sense because I mean the amount of time that people would spend even just looking at swiping on apps.
Yes.
A lot of people now, like that's the way nowadays to meet with people is to swipe on apps, and you put that amount of time in. If you look at it like, oh, I'm putting an hour plus a day into that. What if I redirect that? What if I prioritize that? So did you actually shift from looking for like a girlfriend to I want friends? You
Exactly.
actually shifted the whole thing,
Exactly. I
the
was like,
energy to redirect it versus like, I'll do both and just kind of see what unfolds. You took it and you went, no, this energy, this time, I know how much I'm putting in. You could literally look at your week and be like, I'm dedicating 10 hours a week now to friendship.
exactly.
Cool.
Yeah, yeah. And again, it came from survival, from pain, and I yeah. It's like turn that off. Like you said, how many hours are you swiping or even going on dates? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fine. But I noticed I was very imbalanced in pursuing my next romantic partner. And so yeah, I felt fortunate to have that clarity, and I just directed that towards developing friendships.
Yeah, 'cause you're getting a short-term hit when looking for someone to hook up with. If you're swiping, if you're going out to a bar, you're looking for that kind of short-term dopamine hit that you're gonna get from potentially finding a partner. Friendship, not so much. Like it's probably not going to be that short-term hit. It's going to be extended release, right? It's going to be delayed gratification. Where later on you build a connection that now it's like we'll be friends for life. And it's like, that's amazing. Most partnerships don't last for life. Friendships can. So hearing you, I notice like the priority shifting to notice I can delay gratification. I deeply need this thing. I'm not just going to do the thing that feels good now. I know I need this thing. So let me show up for it because I'm going to want these people in my life. I'm going to want, men in my life that can show up for me and I can show up with no matter what is happening. Long term, I'll have those buddies that I get to walk through life with. I think we all want that. We all need that. But can we actually prioritize it and look at our life? Because everybody, I'll say most people say that they want that. But then if you look at how are you spending your time?
Mhm.
Are you actually putting yourself out there? Are you actually being vulnerable and real enough to do that? And like you said, putting the same amount of effort in that you would if you were looking for a partner into friendship. It's beautiful.
Yeah, and want to talk about like specific things that people can do to cultivate that, but first related to relating romantically, I also notice, and this also became clear, I've made much better decisions in my romantic partnerships having spent the time to cultivate deep friendships, right? Because now I'm coming from a space of fulfillment, just like fulfilling our self love, right? We're going to not enter into a toxic relationship or have a much better chance to not do that when we feel good with ourselves, when we feel fulfilled by our friendships, and that we're not looking for that short burst of connection, dopamine through sex or through even another romantic partner, and that I made better decisions there. Not that I was making like toxic, terrible decisions, but I definitely stayed in relationships longer than I should have when it was clear. And a lot of that was from fear of being alone, from fear of not having support, not having that friendship. Whereas when you've built up that bank, that reserve of love and connection and even touch with friends, right? And that's there, and you're like in you're dating and you're like, this person is not for me. It, at least for me, and I think for most people, it just felt way easier to be like, yeah, this is not my path.
Yeah. Because it's not out of necessity. It's out of a choice. I don't need that person. Like, oh, I need to find my next person. It's like, I get to choose. And that also happens in friendship. So let's get into it. Let's get in how
Yeah.
you start to choose friends. How do you start to prioritize spending time with certain people? I'd love to hear from you, because this has just happened in the past couple of years. Like, how did you take action around it? You said the lunch thing. You said
Yeah.
inviting people in, but consistent action to choose the right people to be in your life, because there's layers of friendship, right? There's acquaintances, there's friends, there's people you're close with, and then there's like the best friend group, and we got our core team.
We're
Basically,
best friends.
we're besties. You can't tell. But yeah, right, you have those kind of concentric circles of relationships, and there's layers to it. But yeah, how'd you start prioritizing it? How does that look? How did it look for you, and then how could it look for people that are wanting to start cultivating friendships?
Yeah, I would say, I mean, I got lucky in that we met early on in that journey, and there were other guys and women who I went on friend dates, let's call them that, and as well, and didn't have the same connection. But it's about putting yourself out there in the same way as if you're dating. Like it's vulnerable to like be like, hey, let's go grab lunch with this friend, and they may say no. They may not make the time for you. You may go and not really connect with them. It's just like dating in a lot of ways. So opening yourself up to vulnerability. So I just remember being like, I'm gonna ask these people to grab a meal, coffee, whatever, being vulnerable and persistent, because we met early on and there's dozens of people that I didn't become deep friends with, and that's okay. But if you never start, right, because of fear of rejection, all these things, you're not gonna find that connection. And then, like David White says, is the forgiveness too. Like no one's perfect. Also, we got to go. Like, what am I looking for in a friendship? What am I willing to tolerate? And also, I found being pretty strict in that area, because time that I'm putting towards developing a friendship where they're not on the same page, or they're just not showing up in the same way, is time away from, now that we're friends, like us hanging out or us potentially meeting if we haven't met.
It makes sense. It's friendship standards, just like you would have relationship standards when looking for a partner. It's like we need to have that. And I mentioned the sociogenetic thing before, but who we spend time with literally changes our genetic structure. So to be very specific on your, as I would say in relationship, needs, wants, desires. And it's kind of layered of what do I actually need? Like what's bottom line necessity when going into any relationship, whether it be romantic or friendship. What are the wants? There's things like, oh, it'd be great if that's there. Not really a make or break, but I want it to be there. And desires, kind of bonus point things. Like ideally tall, handsome. You know what I mean? Like there's
Not
this,
taller than you, though.
not taller. Nobody can be taller than me. It can't be my friend. But this, these kind of layers of friendship like, requirements, and to not even settle in friendship. Like you have those light friendships, have all those people you can connect with in different spaces, but to go deep with the people. And sometimes that means you got to let go of some people, like the ones that are like, oh, I'm friends with my high school buddies because we've been friends. It's like, okay, maybe that's great for you. Maybe you need to have a new standard and go in deep with somebody that's going to meet you where you are now and help you grow now and show up for you now, for who you are now, not who you were in high school. And that's hard. That is hard for some people to cut the relationships, and friendships can sometimes be harder to end than romantic relationships because it's not as obvious. So like, oh, we need to bring this thing to a close. I don't know if you've had an experience like ending a friendship or transitioning from there, but that's a difficult thing in itself. But it goes to the line of having a standard of what I want in a friendship and what I want to grow into and who I want to be called out by, who I want to be called up by, who are going to be my people that I'm standing with and walking through life with. It's important.
Yeah, and to your point, I've found this not personally because I've moved around so much, but with friends of mine who have friends, and I'm supporting them in their difficulty with this other friend, and look, I want to say like no one's perfect, right? And these friends are often childhood friends, and that's beautiful. I wish that I had a friend since 5 years old. And we change so much from 5 to 35, from, 25 to 45, right? And this, I think of like the sunk cost fallacy, like this idea that I've put up so much. They use it in economics, like money and gambling. Like I've gambled so much in this. I'll go back to friendship. I've put in so much time and energy into this friendship, or we've known each other since we were 5. Of course, I'm gonna keep being friends. But it's like, well, really, is that serving you? And so I think it's important to really check in and go, what is it that I'm getting and giving out of this friendship and into this friendship, and is it a net positive? Net negative, or where are we at in there? And is it because we've just known each other since elementary school and actually I'm such a different person, or it could be from a year ago? That's often the case. So I think we're talking about like how to find friends, and we're going to dive into that. But if you have friends, again, I think it could be taking away from a more fulfilling friendship if you're just hanging out because you've known each other for a certain amount of time.
For sure. I remember when I stopped drinking and being kind of in the club promoting scene where I was in high school, how many of my friends still saw me as, oh, you're the club promoter. You're the guy that we go out together, we get fucked up and we do the thing and we party and we're up all night. It's like, I'm not doing that anymore. And some of it kind of naturally just like, yeah, because I'm not going there. We're not connecting. But then some of the relationships kind of lingered to where I had to close out those friendships. That's hard because what can happen is you can be like, oh, I'm going to be alone. I'm not going to fit in. I'm not going to be with my people. And the tribe mentality, we want to fit in. We want to be liked. And, both you and I can relate to this. And this is why we read The Courage to Be Disliked, is because we want that. We desire that. And are you willing to let that go to actually cultivate the friendships that are really, truly meaningful? And that ability, like you would end a relationship that's not serving you, that's romantically, doing the same thing with a friendship. But let's dive in to cultivating friendships, because I think there's something here. A lot of what we're saying sounds very serious and like, oh, you got to do this, got to do that. One of the things I think is the most interesting piece about cultivating any relationship is the ability to be a little silly. Like the ability to bring play in, I think it just drops the guards that we have up in our day-to-day life. And I think that's what I can attribute for me making friends anywhere in the world, wherever I went, is just that little bit of banter, like that little bit of like crack that little joke. That's kind of the foundation of charisma, is the ability to be in a setting or take a question that would be serious and kind of play with it a little bit. Why do kids make friends so quickly on the playground? They're just like, hey, oh, let's hang out. Okay, cool. And let's play together. Let's do sand stuff. Oh, and we're friends now. And then they're just friends. It's like, that's amazing. Why can't we do that as adults? It's because we take ourselves very seriously and we think there's order in certain ways to do things. And in some places there are. But that ability to play and that ability to not be so serious about it. And I've mentioned this before in my story on a different episode, but play can just be the idea of curiosity. And the most curious people are deemed the most interesting people, which is funny because conversationally, if I'm asking you a bunch of questions and then we leave the conversation, you're probably going to think, wow, Ryan was so interesting. And all I did was ask you questions about you. So that's a little like thing to sprinkle in to your repertoire when meeting people's asking questions about them and that curiosity versus like, oh, I'm this, I do this, and blah, 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 blah. It's like, no. Like, how can you bring a little bit of play, a little bit of curiosity about the other? And then they're more likely to want to get to know you and it just reciprocates. That's like a foundation of any charisma, but it equals more connection. It's not so serious.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think of the other night, this little girl, she was like 5, came up to Stella, 9-year old, my 9-year old daughter, and was like, will you be my friend? Like just super directly. And I think it was so cute. And it's also, they're playful and they're okay being vulnerable.
Yeah.
Right? Like
Yeah.
imagine us going, like that's essentially what I was saying. Like when you ask someone to lunch, it's like, will you be my friend? And they could say no. And I think kids are less scared of rejection.
Yeah.
Right? They don't really know what it is. But yeah, and being curious, being playful, and listening. I mean, we're shifting a little bit into the emotion side. I definitely, and we want to dive into that, but the playfulness is super important. And listening, to me, that's part of curiosity.
Definitely.
Asking questions and then listening.
Yeah.
And I would say, yeah, if you have that friend who is never asking questions or there's always some drama, it's 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 dynamic. I don't want to say just cut them off, right? Like, but really ask yourself, like, what is the dynamic here? What I'm serving, and then communicate, because it's not just cut them off. It's like using nonviolent communication. We said we wanted to talk a little bit about communication here because I think that's such a huge part of relationships, and especially men. Have trouble being vulnerable, communicating as a man, but saying, what is it that I feel, and checking in with yourself, and we maybe dive into that, and then communicating, this is how I feel, and this is what I need, and it could be to that friend who's, let's say, always coming with some drama, and you feel like they don't really listen to you. Be like, hey, I feel a little bit that you don't listen or care about what's going on in my life, and that hurts. Maybe they used to. Maybe you used to do that, or maybe they don't at all. And I need a little bit more reciprocity. I need to be able to share what's going on with me, and maybe they can receive that, and maybe not. Relating, being an adult in relationships, we're not taught these things. But that's just like a brief kind of communication thing. But
Well, I love that because, yeah, you could be on the side of people that are like that. And you could also be on the side of, oh, I think I'm that person. Or, if you
totally.
are the person that is complaining, that is, not seeing the good in the world and just constantly talking about things that are perceived negative. It goes into this interesting study that they did with these kids in school. I think they did it 5th grade all the way through high school through senior year. And they did a study and they wanted to see what makes a kid popular? Like, what do the popular kids have in school that others don't? Like, what is it about that? And they did thousands of kids over hundreds of schools all over the US and a bit in Europe, but most of the US. And I'm curious if you can guess, like, what do you think it is that made kids popular in school?
Funny and go back to curious, like ask questions. I don't know.
Fitting in there in a way, a lot of people would think, like, oh, athletic or smart probably wouldn't fit into popular necessarily. But there would be these kind of attributes that wouldn't necessarily capture how simple it is when they interviewed the kids that were deemed by their class the most popular. They asked them, you know, how many friends do you have here? They'd list them all. Oh, all these people, all these people. And then they would interview the people that were less popular and down the scale and realize, okay, yeah, you have less friends, but what is their perception of the people? The popular kids were the ones that liked the most people. The most likable people liked the most people. And how simple is that? And what you're saying is the people with the drama and say, oh, this, that, and this, I'm in this group and you're in that, or separating and isolating, it's harder to have more friends. The most likable people like the most people. And that shows up now. That's, if I could attribute anything to the way that I move through the world, generally, I'm seeing the good in everybody. Like, that's how I move through the world. So making friends wherever I go becomes something that is very doable. Even if it's not lasting friendships, I'm getting along with most people. So if you notice you're somebody who has a kind of negativity bias, as many of us do, and kind of assume the worst, and it's like, oh, that guy's probably fucking like that, and they're probably like that. See if you could switch that. See if you can have the curiosity. See if you can have that ability to see the good. And that just shifts what people then see in you. Because if I see the good in you, you're probably going to see the good in me. Just like when I was talking about me asking questions towards you, if I'm genuinely curious versus, oh, where'd you go to school? What do you do for work? Kind of judgmental questioning. No, if I'm actually curious and I'm like, dude, I like what you're wearing. I like those beads, dude. I got the same ones. Awesome.
Sick.
They're
I
actually,
gave them to you.
you gave them to me, and they're actually friendship beads. But, like, just taking note and giving out, you could say love, you could say likability, but just being somebody that likes people gets people to like you. It's that simple.
Mhm.
So just cultivating the skill of complimenting people, of actually genuinely being present with people, of asking questions to others. That's as simple as I can put that. But I thought that statistic was so cool because we can often think, oh, popular people, they just have these attributes that they're born with this or this, that, and the other. But across the board, they just liked the most people. They saw the good in more people than the ones that didn't. And that put them at the top of the popularity chain. That put them at the top of charisma. And people saw positive attributes in them because they saw it in others.
Makes sense. Yeah. And it makes me think of, and that's beautiful. And it puts you into a space of openness
Yeah.
for those connections. And one of the things that is so fulfilling and special about our friendship, and I think the most meaningful ones are the depth of them. So when I hear that, it makes sense totally, and I
Starter
want
pack.
to cultivate it for sure. And just we're very different in a lot of ways. It's like I'm trying to do more of that and open myself up because I do tend to keep like a very small circle in a sense. But I do value depth, and I can't create that depth or those connections without being open, like casting a wide net and then going, okay, this is who I connect with, and I want to talk a little bit about, especially as men, being able to develop depth in a relationship. Because look, we're not saying start and just find a deep brotherhood. That's hard to do. Join a pickleball league, like put yourself out there, connect with people in let's say that I wouldn't call it shallow, but like the first level, and then start to go deeper. And I think that's when it can be super rewarding, and to have that witness on a deeper, more profound level in a way. And men are not really celebrated necessarily for doing that. It used to be, especially in the past, like unmanly
Yeah.
to be emotional, to share with another man your emotions. So maybe we can shift a little bit into that conversation, because um, I feel like our relationship obviously has that depth. So I'm curious from your side what you've done to cultivate the ability to do that in brotherhood, in friendship, to go deep, because you have the play, and that's great, and you can dive in.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely looking at casting the wide net to see how many people you can connect with to cultivate that ability. And then when you find the ones like you, we have a certain depth we can go to. And so I really feel it's sharing what's real moment to moment. I know that sounds like kind of vague, but just the ability to share and take the lead on what you're experiencing without needing to get anything from it. So, how can I be more specific? Thinking about the last 2 years, I had a challenging experience. So I could either be like, "Oh, dude, I'm all good," like, and this is a very masculine thing to do, right? Is be like, "Oh, dude, I'm fine. Things are cool. Let's just go surf. Let's go. Let's just do the thing. Like, let's keep our friendship fun." And then I'll go kind of suffer in silence, right? That's kind of the old paradigm of being a man, like you were saying. But what if instead it was like, yeah, no, I would like to surf. That would be awesome. And like, yeah, I've had a hard morning, and this happened just not too long ago, actually. Like, I was up and we got woke up in the middle of the night. My partner had a nightmare, and she's processing a lot with what she's experiencing. And yeah, man, it's just hard right now. I'm just today's hard. I'm kind of tired. Um, Looking forward to surfing. It's going to be good. It's going to feel good to get out there. But yeah, just feeling like heaviness in my body. And that being enough. And like, it doesn't matter what you say. It doesn't matter what happens from there. Maybe we just paddle out. And just me sharing that is enough for me. I don't need you to be like, "Oh man, like, yeah, I hear you." I don't need that. If we go deeper beyond that, that's great. But that first layer, just willing to be vulnerable, willing to share without needing anything back, I think is such a gift to also have that container, because it's been both sides. You've had, and specifically relationship stuff, like you've had relationship stuff that you share with me, and we've talked through it, and times where, sometimes there's no response, so I can just hear it, and vice versa. But to be able to just share real and vulnerably and not need anything from you, and just be able to talk about things that are hard. Easier said than done, right? It's like, just talk about hard things. But just being able to, and we're going to actually give a practice at the end of this episode to take away and actually try with a brother, because it takes time. It really is. Let's not act like this is easy. I was listening to this conversation not too long ago, and this expert talking about learning language and how that translates to changing pattern in the body was talking about, yeah, learning German is hard. You wouldn't think that going to, read one book, taking a few lessons online, you're like, I'm fluent in German. But then we think, oh, if I want to change this pattern in myself, I already went to 3 therapy sessions. I read this book. I listened to this podcast. Like, what's going on? Nothing works. It's like, well, these are patterns for a reason. So we all have different layers of pattern around it. But whatever it is for you, like that, just noticing, where is my block right now? Some might be, bigger than others, but just a little bit of a layer. Like, where is that bit of vulnerability in the onion that I can just peel back and drop into? Maybe it's just asking for a little bit of support, and it doesn't have to be a big thing. It's just a little bit of support. And it could be emotionally, it could be physically, it could be mentally, it could be any of these areas that we talk about. But I think identifying that area, and then not necessarily needing anything in specific back. I think that's a big thing. I know it's a big topic, but curious, yeah, what you think about that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, that's how you create depth and intimacy. Really, is through vulnerability and allowing yourself to be seen. And sharing, and yeah, it deserves its own podcast series because first we need to be able to check in with ourselves and understand what it is that we're feeling or that we are even feeling. Because especially as men, but women can do this too, but that we're not in touch with our emotions. So we might be feeling sad and distract ourselves with drinking, partying, surfing, athletics. That was what I've come to realize is that a lot of my processing was through physicality, which is good, and it didn't allow me to process things. So yeah, like starting um, with ourselves is understanding that and being vulnerable enough and having a friend that creates a safe space that, when you share, hey man, I had a bad morning, I'm like, hey, don't be a wuss, suck it up. Like that's going to feel shitty to you.
Yeah.
So I know you said you don't need anything, but I do think you need a safe space,
Definitely.
and I know you didn't mean it in that sense, but that's why, I mean, we do have to cultivate these things and we do have to be selective, and it's not our job to teach our friend like how to be an adult. These are things that we're not taught in school. But I would say developing that deeper brotherhood, be vulnerable, be the first to, instead of just talking about the score to the game last night, nothing wrong with that. um, and if you're feeling sad and you guys have never shared that before, be like, hey, yeah, the game was good, but man, I couldn't sleep because I just been thinking about my ex, and it's really painful in my heart, and I'm feeling a bit down, and I think that, and I feel you've done that in our relationship is shared, and then that gave me permission because I knew it was in me, and I would share and have the great fortune to have a mom who I can share anything with, but haven't necessarily done that in brotherhood because I was scared to be vulnerable because I felt like a lot of the guys that I talked to, it was just surface level, but I could be the first, like go first. It's like the whole thing, like smile first, take that initiative, and hopefully they'll meet you there. And if not, that's okay. And then you can go deeper and share and get into communication.
It's also kind of a shit test for the friendship. Because if you're like,
Yeah.
ooh, I don't feel like he would be able to hear this, it's like, okay, either try it out or okay, this probably isn't a brother.
Mhm.
Like, really, you should be able to drop in with brothers and talk about all areas of life. If you're like, oh, this is somebody I watched the game with. Cool. Have those kind of friends. I have friends like that. We'll go play sports, surf, hang, whatever. I'm not going to drop in and share my heart with them. I'm not going to dump everything onto them. So know those people, know those arenas. And you brought up a great point. It's like, know yourself, know your emotions, like flex that emotional muscle, start to explore it in yourself. Like that is one of the hardest things for men. Often the men that come to me say, oh, I want to feel more play. I want to feel more excitement for life. And then we go into session, realize, actually, I don't really let myself feel that much of anything. I'm not really letting myself feel. It's not just like I want to feel playful or good. I also don't know what real anger feels like or real sadness feels like. I don't really let myself go there. And so just have that ability to explore it with yourself so then you can feel a bit more confident to talk about it with others, because we both have like self-exploration practices with that via breath work, via journaling, via whatever it may be, going to ceremony. And then so we can talk about it. We have a certain capacity, but that self-exploration is just necessary across the board. And check in with the people around you. Take a list of like the 10 people in your life that you're close to and be like, is there anybody that I could really share everything with? Like, can all of me be seen by anybody in my life? And I think that that is a great way to check in, to be like, okay, there is one person. I'm going to dive in with them. I'm going to see. I'm going to journey with them a bit more. Or, nope, don't got that. I just got the homies that I go to the bar with. I don't really have anybody I can drop in with. Great. Start doing the things that we talked about to cultivate more friendships. But I think that's a great test to see, okay, where am I at in my friendships? This also is true in relationship as well. This is true in partnership. If you can't share your full emotional experience with your partner as a man, you can't do that. You need to be strong and firm and rigid all the time. Probably not the most whole partnership that you could have. So yeah, I think that's a beautiful point.
Yeah, and in that, like, think about the environment that you're putting yourself in, like, to go back to cultivating friendships. If you want that depth, and I think we all crave that,
Yeah.
and you're not finding it, maybe stop going to the club every weekend and looking for your brotherhood there.
Yeah, it's
Because
not the place.
right, and I don't want to whatever, like, we'll go to the club, we can have fun, but look at the environment that you're seeking that brotherhood or trying to cultivate it. And I think for the deeper, more meaningful relationships, it's not going to be in the party scene,
Mhm.
you know. And then yeah, but being the one to go first, because you might share it with that friend who's your sport bro, and you're like, I think he has it in him, or I think I have it in me, but we haven't really had these kind of conversations. And by you sharing your heart to them, maybe they'll understand, wow, I'm really cut off from this, and you guys grow together, right? And you give them permission to, and then maybe they're like, and you kind of just level up together, and you have that conversation of yeah, when you shared that, it felt a bit scary for me. I didn't even know how to respond, when you started crying about your ex, and you grow from there. Because often we're not going to meet someone that's right at our level of how we want to relate. Be the first.
Mhm. Love it. Yeah, the practice that we're going to give is just perfect for this.
Yeah.
We teed it up perfectly because
Beautiful.
you could just take the practice and then go try it with a brother. Like, go check in with him, be like, hey, saw this podcast, learn this thing, want to try it out. Let's just see what shows up. Let's see what occurs. Um, yeah, maybe it's worth talking about some kind of practical pieces as well, because you're talking about, don't go to the bar, don't go to these places. How do you start to actually, like, somebody's hearing this, got tools, got understanding. Okay, I can see what I want, need, desire. I'm gonna find a bro. I'm gonna drop in. Do you have any other kind of little nuggets to, like, let's get out there, let's go find somebody, or somebody's in your life now and actually start to deepen that thing? Is there anything we haven't spoken to yet that maybe the listeners should have to leave with, that they can kind of take in their day to day?
I would say, I mean, there's nothing I can think of that we haven't touched on, um, but maybe just to emphasize the vulnerability aspect and persistence. Like, um, things don't just happen on their own. And I remember when I was going out on my, like, friendship quest. I see those memes of the two wizards. They're like my bros. That was like my friendship quest. But it was a deep mindset of trying to cultivate it through persistence, through vulnerability, dealing with rejection, like, as much as in cultivating romantic partnership. But just to really shift that, and it might not feel as urgent as it did for me, and maybe this is a call to just say, to put a little urgency in it, because we know, like, through experience, through statistics, um, that loneliness is a real killer. I mean, to men and women, and we need to be proactive in cultivating these things. And we've given some of the tools to go deep, but that's its own podcast series. But you got to start. So I would just say, the intentionality and the vulnerability.
Yeah. Find the spaces, find the men's work, find those groups of people that are doing it. It's everywhere now. You can definitely find it online. You can probably find it in the town that you're in. And if it's not there, build it, create it, and prioritize it. And as always, we'll be available too. So throw things in the comments, like, ask questions, continue this conversation. we're wanting to build community around these discussions. I imagine we'll have experts on in the future and keep going with this conversation more, but engage yourself with it. Like, we're here for you guys.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, man.
Yeah. And I would say, and eventually come down to Nosara, Costa Rica. When this goes live, we won't have the facility, but eventually that's going to be the beautiful thing of what we're building in the physical space of whole human is to have a place that's not the bar. That's this place where you're going to at least meet people that are on the same wavelength of looking for that. And I look forward to that very much.
There we go. Thank you, brother.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. See you all.
See you guys.